Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we are going to let our guests introduce themselves to our listeners and viewers at home. First, we have Mr. James JE Pittman.
Hey guys, James Pittman here, JE Pittman for the Googles. I write the Felix Chance series of urban fantasy. Just finished up the first major arc with Off Chance, so be looking for that. Just released last week. And, you know, the Felix Chance series, well, that's an old friend of his.
Now, was that intentional, putting in the Reaper character when you wrote that?
The way Felix developed, no. Because I was just starting off with him just kind of being a smart-ass con man, etc. And then I realized, he's been alive for a couple centuries. And then, he's had a couple faces. Well, I guess the Reaper took some of them. So he's probably won a game or two with him.
Okay. All right. Next, we have the mini personalities of Miss Jana S Brown.
Hi guys, nice to be here again with some of my very, very favorite people. I'm Jana S Brown. I also write under the pen name Jena Rey. That's where you will find my fantasy, urban fantasy, science fiction, all the speculative stuff, very often with smoochies.
Okay. Next, we have Miss Jennie JF Posthumous.
I am JF Posthumous. I write fantasy, urban fantasy, sci-fi, and how could I mess up this panel? I mean, my last name means after death. Also, I write the Lady of Death series.
All right. Next, we have Mr. John M. Olsen.
Hi. Yeah, if you want to find me on Google or something, the M is important because there's like a million John Olsens out there. I'm a science fiction writer primarily, although I've dabbled in a lot of different genres, especially with short stories. I have my Polecat Protocol series. I also do editing, which is kind of funny because Jana is my editor for a lot of my first pass edits as well. So yeah, editors need editors. And so it's a lot of fun to be here. I've got a short story where I used the character Death. And so yeah, it's a lot of fun for this topic.
All right. Next, we have Miss Melissa McShane of Warhamster fame.
That's right. I am coming to you live from a beautiful sunny morning in India. At least it's working on being a sunny morning. It better be because I have to do laundry today and it dries outside. I write many different varieties of fantasy, including contemporary fantasy with The Last Oracle and historical fantasy with the Extraordinary series. And my current work in progress is the War Master series. Not Warhamster, thank you, JR. I'm never going to stop saying that, which is a lit RPG fantasy adventure, and I'm excited to be here.
All right. And finally, we have Miss Teri K. Jobe and the many voices thereof.
Good evening. Seems like the appropriate voice for this panel. Teri K. Jobe, also the narrator of the Lady of Death series, written by Miss Posthumous down there. And just general, like darkness, like my soul. This sounded like fun.
At this point, this panel has just become so incestuous, they're going to think George R.R. Martin wrote it. Come on.
Possible.
I didn't plan it this way, people. I didn't plan it this way. All right, so the next part of the introduction, dear listener, is how we first found them. So we actually all met hunting in a graveyard for a Reaper scythe to steal, but, I mean, we were going to liberate it for science and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When you say and stuff, that's a lot of gray area, so you can pretty much do whatever you want.
Reason.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That'll hold up in court, too.
Just for that reason.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to give you more free legal advice, even though I'm not a lawyer. I'm just saying, hypothetically, based on research I might have done for a book, if you're going to have a baseball bat on your person for self-defense, keep a ball and glove there, too, so nobody throws around words like premeditated. And I'm just saying.
Just in case.
Just in case. So not the legal. That's not us. All right, next, because this is the Blasters and Blades podcast, we have to do the religion question. So meet Joe Black, Reaper, or Skinwalkers. All right, we're going to go first with you, James.
Meet Joe Black.
Okay. Go on.
I like the classy appearance, the kind of the everyday encounter aspect of it.
Okay, that's a good reason. All right, let me finish fixing this. All right. Next, we have Miss Jana S Brown.
Aw.
I have a kitten who has decided to dig his claws into my knee, and he may be meeting his own little kitten reaper here soon. Don't do that.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
Goodness.
He's got 8 more lives.
Well, not
I don't know about that.
I don't know. They pushed the older dog to the point she actually barked at them, which she has not done frequently, but she had enough, and she barked at them and chased them out of her favorite room, and they were banished. But anyway, now I forgot. Oh, I was going to say none of the above. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, because there is a really, really funny Reaper in that one.
Okay. There is in androids. You can't go wrong with androids. Next, we have Miss JF Posthumous. Jenny, you got to unmute.
I'm not sure if she can hear you.
All right. Well, then we will go. All right, now she's unmuted.
Woo. I am back. I don't know if any of you, I'm like Jana, the TV show, I think it was called Reaper. I don't know if any of you saw that.
Yeah, that was a good one.
But that was a fun show about, the kid who I believe ends up having to be the Grim Reaper. But that was a fun one. I'm not really a fan of the others. Never really watched them more than like clips. So most of my knowledge of the Grim Reaper comes from books and a very, very old, ancient movie that I watched as a kid about someone defeating death. And I can't even remember the title of it.
Seven Seal.
It was a Celtic, Irish type movie. It was like a TV type movie. And it included banshees. And I think that's why I watched it to begin with. I do remember parts of it scared the crap out of me.
Hey, can't go wrong with the Heralds of Dead.
I will say that if you're going for TV adaptations, although I didn't throw any of those on that list, Dead Like Me is the superior one.
Yeah.
And they even had one where a guy literally died because of toilet from an airplane in his head.
Yep.
Yeah.
That would be my last one to go.
The movie I remember centered, it was like Celtic, and it's centered around someone who actually was able to capture death. And all the problems that came from that, because I remember in the end they had to they caught death in a bag and they had to let it go. It was either Celtic or like Day of the Dead. I think.
Well, if you know what that is, dear listener, you can throw that in the comment section and we'll all know at that point.
It was an older movie, and like I said, I watched it when I was a kid, and it's only parts I remember, but I remember they caught it and no one could die after they caught death. So yeah, it was a very weird movie. Like I said, that's what really got me started on it.
Okay. What about you, Mr. John M. Olsen?
Well, I feel kind of like a Luddite here because I haven't seen any of the three, but I really like the concept of the Skinwalkers just because it's really creepy. And so I think I'll have to go with that one.
Okay. All right. Next, we have Miss Melissa McShane.
Well, I also have not seen any of these, and I was going to go with Dead Like Me. So since you mentioned it, I'm going to say that's legitimate because I loved that show. It was so good, so funny, and moving at the same time. It was really good. So
I did a quick Google search because now Google has the AI engine of everything in there. And according to them, there's an episode of The Storyteller called The Soldier and Death, where he tricks Death into a sack and keeps him as captive. So it's an episode of a show, a larger TV franchise.
How old is that one? Because, like I said,
does not play.
it could have been. It seemed like a movie to me, but again, I was a kid at the time, so.
Might have been an hour-long TV show.
The Storyteller CVs was running in the 1980s.
Yeah,
got one season in 1988.
That would fit.
All right. Well, there we go. We got the answer. All right. Next, last, but certainly not least, we got Miss Teri K. Jobe.
Well, I'm also going to go off script because I also have not seen any of those. And I'm going to say...
Joe Black? I figured that was like a classic everyone had seen.
No, not a Brad
I grew
Pitt
up
fan.
under a rock.
Yeah, that's sad romantic death.
Fair. But I'm going to say The Reaper from Soul Music from Terry Pratchett's Discworld series. It's the only movie of that I've seen, but it was interesting. And I just love how sarcastic death is and just done.
Awesome.
Like, I get you.
Okay. Well, obviously, if we're going off the list, because I try to stick to it, some people don't. Not calling anybody out, but I'm just saying. I actually liked the Joe Black as far as that goes. But if we're talking TV shows, Dead Like Me was iconic. It was kind of humorous, and I dig it. Dark humor is kind of my jam. Mm-hmm. So we'll go with that one. All right, and because it's Blasters and Blades, we can't just ask one. So, what is your favorite representation or personification of death in media? James.
I'm not going to pick out a specific one, but the Japanese concept of the Shinigami is probably the one I like the most. Like the Soul Reapers, whether it's in like Bleach or any umpteen other numbers of anime, I really like the Japanese concept with the Soul Reaper. Less coming to kill you, more act as a guide type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Next we have Miss Jana S Brown.
So my favorite, there's a couple that I really like, but I'm very, very fond of Terry Pratchett's death. The Reaper Man who cares for his harvest, and the series that is about death is really, really fun because it really digs into him. But he shows up all over the Discworld, and every time he does, it just makes us all very, very happy. And my husband has a particular death voice, and he'll use it, and my daughter just loses her crap and rolls around laughing because she loves the death voice. And then there had to be a sub voice for the death of rats, which hangs around with death, and she just thinks that that's about the best thing ever. And so I always have that association of this great voice and my daughter losing it. So I really, really love that one. That's probably my very favorite, but it edges out a couple of others only by just a little bit.
Okay, Jenny.
My mouse doesn't want to behave. Oh boy. Honestly, I loved the Calliope Reaper Jones books, and it's about a girl whose father is death, and she ends up inheriting the business. And yeah, it's been a while since I read the books. Because, I'm easily sidetracked by everything else. But it's a good series. Very much squirrel over here. But it's a good series. And, it gives a different twist on the whole death thing. But I also liked... oh God. My brain is going blank. Skullboy who rides a motorcycle. Turns into flame.
Ghost Rider.
Ghost Rider. Thank you. Also love that because in a way that is another personification of death if you think about it. And of course, Reaper was a fun TV show that my husband and I still throw quotes at each other over frequently. And there's actually a nod to it in one of the Lady of Death novels. Because I think it's the third one. Yeah. Where the ponies attack Fellhaven, the bar. If you've seen the show, you'll get the reference. But yeah, I've always loved those representations and how they did death.
All right. What about you, John?
Actually, I've got kind of a new favorite. It's a book that I think was published just a little over a year ago. David Hankins wrote Death and the Taxman. And it's a story about an accountant who, instead of dying like he's supposed to, he steals Death's abilities and trades places with him. And so Death has to steal his position back before he dies of a heart condition. So very humorous kind of a take on the whole thing. And so that's one that it's on my shelf over by my bed here. Kind of a fun story. So yeah, that's my new current favorite representation.
Okay. That is one I'll have to check out. What about you, Melissa?
Well, mine is also Death from Terry Pratchett's Discworld because I am Terry Pratchett's biggest fan. And what makes this even better as a representation of Death is that Death in that world has a granddaughter who is the daughter of his former ward and his adopted daughter. And she's perfectly human, except she has inherited all these things from her grandfather. So she ends up being able to take his place sometimes. And she hates it because when Death gets a wild hair and decides to try and be more human, she ends up filling his place. And so I like what goes on with this this coupling, this pair, because Death is in this world started out as just a concept, and as humans give them human form, then these anthropomorphic personifications gain human attributes. And so Death is trying to understand what it means to be human when he is nothing like. It's not even a little bit human, except when he becomes a little bit human. And I like that representation of Death as something that cares about the people that he is reaping, because he doesn't kill anyone. He's just there to take care of them when they fall. And so that's my favorite, is those two.
Okay. What about you, Teri?
Well, just because I've been rewatching it recently, the representation of Death in the 4th season of Castlevania, the animated series. I thought, I've played some of the Castlevania games, and Death usually turns up somewhere. And I thought the series they did a few years ago was just very well done.
Okay. For me, I guess I'm going to have to go with they're sort of death cops for people that escape from the underworld, but RIPD was a good one. Yeah, so they kind of, it's I guess you'd call it Reaper adjacent. And we'll get into why that fits when we get to the definition part. All right. So what game would you play with the Reaper to pass the time, whether it be before your own passing or just in general? What game are you going to play, James?
So, traditionally it's if you can beat Death in a game of chess, you win your soul back. So I'm just going to twist it with the modern flair, and I'll go with Magic the Gathering, and I'll use a life gain deck because, I can prolong this as long as possible and possibly win. And, hey, I may actually get my life back.
Well, what do the gingers who have no souls do?
They have to steal it first.
They have to steal one and then give it to the Reaper and then steal it back? Right. Or can they just steal someone else's again and it never matters?
Depends. How many freckles do they have? Because a freckle is a soul they've sold. They've stolen. So if they got a lot of freckles, they have a few to spare.
Okay. Just so we got that cleared up. All right,
Yeah,
what
I'm
about
a
you?
ginger, but it's a little bit hard to tell now.
Jana, what about you?
That's a really good question. I liked when we were talking pre-show. I think it'd be fun to play Dungeons and Dragons with Death. Because if you're going to go out, what a way to go.
Mm-hmm.
The question,
You know-
though, is at that point, is he the DM or am I?
And it's a multi-year campaign, right?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Well, of course.
Is
It's
this
got a
one-shot
lot of
or a really long?
addendums to it. And
Well, then you would want to be the DM because then you can guarantee the game
edition.
keeps going.
exactly.
Like 1,001
So,
nights.
yes, exactly. We'll just keep telling stories until,
Mhm.
and then away we go. So
Okay.
I play D&D.
It's an excellent answer and well reasoned. I will accept it. I mean, I would have accepted it anyway, but we're just going to go with it. Jenny, what about you?
Oh, what game? Damned if I know. D&D would be fun, obviously. Normally I only play, and usually it's been second edition. So, but I have no clue because I'm not. Most of the games I play are, D&D board games, that kind of thing. I have managed to win Lords of Waterhaven a few times, so there's that.
Okay.
But either way, it'd be fun to just play a game and have fun.
All right. Next, we have the one, the only Mr. John M. Olsen, where the M is important.
Yeah. You know how long a game of Risk can go?
Mhm.
Yeah, you get the board set out and, well, you can think forever on a turn. Yeah, you can really drag one of those out. I remember in high school, we would go over to a friend's house Friday night, start Risk games, and then we would sleep sometime Saturday morning.
That's right up there with Axis and Allies as far as slow games go.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right, but are you going to cheat to keep the game going, or are you going to play it as is?
Well, yeah, you can make it kind of long, but eventually you get to where there's a tipping point, and so the game is going to end.
Okay.
I don't know that I would want to get caught cheating by Death.
All right. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. But Melissa.
Well, my family's favorite cooperative game is Arkham Horror 3rd Edition. And I would play that with Death because it is a cooperative game. And once you have fought the eldritch horrors of the Lovecraftian universe together, I think it would be really hard to reap someone's soul because you are partners. So I think I would get my soul back by playing cooperatively with Death so that he would be unable to take my soul.
Well, at that point, you're
fellow
recruited.
feeling. Well, yeah.
So is this
I
like an
wouldn't mind
RPG,
that.
or is it a
It
board
is.
game?
It's a board game. You play investigators in Arkham fighting the menace of the Cthulhu mythos.
Okay. What about you, Teri?
Well, I'm going to take a bit of a different tack here. I mean, death is inevitable, so why not have a good time? And some of the best times I've had with friends is playing Cards Against Humanity.
Oh.
I imagine Death could come up with some real good responses.
Mm-hmm.
And as my friends and I have always joked, we're going downstairs anyway playing that game, so I'm going to take Death with me.
That's true.
There you go. All right. I said in the pre-show, and I'll say it again, Uno or Sorry, because those games can last forever.
Mm-hmm.
I made the mistake when the kids were young of saying, well, that's the game, we'll play it, and then it's bedtime. And 3 hours later, I'm like, you're just going to bed. We're done.
Uh-huh.
So, especially if you're trying to drag it out. I mean, it's a long game anyway, but if you're trying to drag it out, that game is just, and especially if you're teaming up because you want it to go forever, like you just all, give everyone all the cards so it keeps going.
Mm.
That's my answer. And what about you, dear listener at home? You could weigh in on what game you would play with Death. All right, and because we are the Blasters and Blades, we do have to ask the caffeinated questions. So, Because we are civilized human beings here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, we are no longer knuckle-dragging troglodytes. Coffee or tea? And what do you think the Grim Reaper is going to drink with you? James, I know you're going to say something other than coffee or tea, but I had to do it because Coffee Brand Coffee sponsors us.
Of course. You got to get the plugs in. At this point, it's going to be a whiskey. I'm just trying to think what whiskey and how high a proof.
You got nothing to lose at this point. Go absinthe or anything, right?
Oh, that's one of my regulars. I should have some really good absinthe drinks that mix with whiskey. That one's fun. Maybe one called the Plot Twist that does that. I'll just go from one of my old favorites, and I'll go Stag Junior. It's 130. No. J. Mattingly Reflection. It's super sweet, tastes like brown sugar, but it's 140 proof, and I'm about the only person that can drink it and stay standing.
Wow.
Challenge accepted. Send me a picture of the bottle offline. All right, and next we have Jana. I'm guessing you aren't going with the whiskey in the bourbon.
No, none of those. I am sticking with my beloved Diet Dr. Pepper. Though, for a special occasion like that, we could do a nice brewed cocoa because that is amazing. It's dark and rich and bubbly and wonderful. And I think that Death would probably appreciate a chocolate that is that dark and lovely. So,
but if you
brewed
drink,
cocoa, we'd do it.
If you drink Dr. Pepper, you can say as your final words, "Is there a doctor in the house?"
Well, it's what the doctor ordered.
There you go. All right.
I'll go back to the commercials.
All right. What about you, Jenny?
Well, I guess it depends on if Death is affected by alcohol, because my husband makes a drink that has been known to flatten people and, knock them out when they're the problem of the party. He calls it an Effidol, 4-letter word to begin with. So, yeah. So I'd probably give him that while I enjoy a Black Rose or Evening Sapphire or something nice. Yeah. See if he's knocked out by the drink.
I'm curious about that one too, so we'll talk offline. All right, John, what about you? What are you drinking with the Grim Reaper?
Okay, if it's going to be with the Grim Reaper and you want to get on his good side, you want something that's really good for your bones, so maybe just a nice tall glass of milk.
I did not see that one coming, but I'll accept it.
I mean, if you're trying to buy his favor, you might say, it's good for you.
Does a body good?
I mean, I would imagine that the Reaper himself or herself is well past caring at that point, but you never know.
It's the thought that counts.
What about you, Melissa?
Well, if it was my last drink and I was drinking with the Grim Reaper, I would have to go with Coca-Cola with a little lemon in a tall glass with ice. And that would be what I'd want to share. I figured, the Grim Reaper either never drinks anything because he's basically a skeleton and there is no stomach, or he's been everywhere. So might as well share something I really love if that's how it's going to go down.
Okay. And finally, we have Teri.
Give it a little bit of both worlds here. Get a nice little caffeine going with some coffee with some chocolate syrup in it, a little bit of sugar, and then to top it off, a Blue Moon.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, if I'm paying for the beverage, it's going to be, whatever whiskey I have around, because why not, Irish salute on the way out. If he's paying for it, I would have to do some research on the most expensive whiskey I could never normally afford. And I'll throw that on the list, because why not? I mean, you only live once, right? Well, unless you're immortal or something, or cat, because we have it on good authority. Janice Cat has many lives. There's another TV show. I just got thinking about it that I can't remember. It was set in like an academy, like where the kids were going to school learning about magic, and it had a Reaper plot line as well, where one of the characters like became a Reaper. And I can't remember what that was. I think it was a. Go ahead. Was somebody gonna say something? I'm going to have to look that up, and if I figure it out, because now it's coming to me and it's never going to go away. It's going to be tinkling in my ear until I figure it out. But I will look that up while other people are talking. So first, we're going to say, what is a Reaper? So I'm not quoting Wikipedia this time. I'm going to Merriam-Webster, the authority of all authorities on words that are sometimes wrong. So according to Merriam-Webster, the Grim Reaper is a popular personification of death in Western culture in the form of a hooded skeletal figure wearing a black robe and often carrying a scythe. And yes, I realize that word is weird and it does not pronounce like it should if you read it phonetically. Just throwing that out there. So does everyone cool with that definition?
Sure.
So more broadly, I think the Grim Reaper is as we hear the term, but there are other cultures have other personifications of things like death. So do you guys want to start talking? Do you have favorites of the various cultures that have the embodiment of death culturally? Like there's what Morte, I think, in the Mexican god of death that they celebrate. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. Baron Swati, I think.
Samedi.
Yeah, then there's the Voodoo has some version of that.
Yeah, that's the Baron. That's Baron Samedi.
You got, was it Papa Gede? I can't remember. I wrote this down and I didn't write where I got the damn
Papa Gay is different, but it's all the Caribbean cultures have a whole lot of personifications of the Reaper and the Death, and it's various spirits, and a lot of it also depends on what side you're on, because there's a lot of different sides when you come to it, and so there's a lot that ties into all of those Caribbean, because it's not just voodoo. Voodoo is kind of a blanket of what would we call it? It's a blanket for a lot of different sub-religions and sub-ways to look at the spirit world. So there's a lot of good ones there, and I like writing about those. I've got some of that in my New Orleans urban fantasy, and kind of that appeal to what kind of death it is and where you go there. And I really like Hades. I like Hades from Greek myth. Mm-hmm. Anybody who's got a 3-headed puppy, I mean, gosh, how can you not like the guy?
Well, and Hades has been rehabilitated so much these days. You know, you have a lot of people wanting to make him the romantic figure because, you know, he's the guy who doesn't cheat on his wife in Greek mythology.
Well,
and
also think about the old
he gets a bad rap.
The Hercules Xena TV show. The guy they had playing him was very handsome and swoon worthy. So and he was actually a decent character in that too.
Yeah, so you get a lot of those. I'm reading Lore Olympus right now, and it's Hades and Persephone, and so what I find interesting about the different mythologies surrounding death around the world is what it says about the culture. What they put, what construction they put on death. You know, do you have a death that is just the one that collects the souls, or is this someone who's actually killing people? Are you afraid of death? Is death something that is natural, and so you welcome death when it comes at the end of a long life? I find that interesting to see where people fall down on that. You know, fall on that particular line. You have cultures where it's a celebration, and you know, I think for most, in fact, I'm running through my memory, going over what do I know, because I don't know very many culture death aspects, definitions. I don't have enough of those in my memory to be able to say for sure, but I think for a lot of them, death becomes something that makes sense of something that would otherwise be scary. And in that case, you know, wanting to make death something comforting, or at least something believable, I think is behind a lot of the desire to personify death.
Yeah, with the whole Hispanic and Caribbean kind of thing, it's a very large umbrella. You get the sugar skulls, you get all of that stuff in there. But it all seems to be very tied into family. It's extremely strong ties to the family and your ancestors. And so that's something that is there to make that a more comfortable kind of a transition, where you think, okay, yeah, we're going to go and take care of grandma's bones today, those sorts of things. And so tying it back into the family makes it less of a scary thing, I think.
Mhm.
Okay, that makes sense. So sometimes I think the embodiment of death is used to scare people, into being good. But sometimes it's a comforting thing, like sort of putting you at ease in that transition. In fact, some of the most interesting plots along the concept of like somebody who's a Grim Reaper character are, him comforting the person who's dying. I mean, it's not always like the Ghost has the one famous where like they pull the body into the dark pit, the guy that killed Patrick Swayze. But not all of them are so nefarious like that. I think sometimes it is the comforting, help the old grandma, go back to her family or whatever it is. So do you have a preference as far as like the role in the story, in the plot that the Reaper plays?
Yeah, I always like him as the guide. And in the case of like Ghost, it depends on which way you're being guided. Because if you're being dragged down to hell, yeah, the Reaper's probably gonna get a little violent and have to strong arm you down there. But if you're going the other way, it tends to appear pretty gentle. I like it was a meme I saw and something I really incorporated in when I was writing Felix. Why does death carry a scythe?
Mhm.
To reap your soul?
No, it's
And
to clear
reap
the path to heaven. It's easier to walk down a path that's been freshly mown. So he sharpens the scythe and clears the path for you. And the reason it needs mowing is because it's overgrown, and because not that many people go that way anymore.
Interesting.
So I like that. I like the guide aspect. Think about it. You pop out of your body as a ghost, and you're looking at yourself laying down there, and you're like, well, what the heck happened? Where am I going now? And which way do I go? There's no, celestial afterlife GPS. You're just sitting there. Be nice to have somebody to walk with you or play a game or, figure out what you're doing. Somebody to show you the ropes. So I like that image of death a lot better than like a lot of your collector of souls, the ones who have come for you, your time is near, that kind of ominous versions, which they have their place. They're fun. It's great imagery for usually that kind of imagery I like better for a character who is alive and is kind of a death dealer type character. Like there's one anime I really like. It's called 86. It's about these kids who are forced to fight in giant robots. Well, they pilot the robots against the artificial intelligent machines that are essentially, they're all going to die. They're the ultimate red shirts. One of them is called Reaper, or no, Gravedigger. That's what he's called. And his little call sign is a headless skeleton with a shovel. But he collects all the names from the bots of all the kids who have died and carries them on to the final resting place. So I like that guide, that comforting figure, even in alive or dead. But also he got the rep because he is the most formidable warrior. He kills all the bots. He is the last man standing from every unit. So it kind of goes both ways. If they're alive, it's an interesting mood to create for a character. That indomitable spirit that is inevitable. This character is inevitable, just like death. And once death has come, I like it as a guide. So I kind of like the dual aspect.
There's a really awesome representation of the kind Reaper. It's a comic artist, Jennie JF. And she has these comics where death adopts a cat who dies, a black cat, of course. And so it goes on with all of the things that they do as they're welcoming both people and animals. And so it's just a wonderful tear-jerking kind of a comic.
I like that strip. I like that one a lot.
I think it also depends on what you're writing because, depending on the story you're writing, death may be that beneficial character or he may be that cold jerk, the one who is not benevolent, maybe not evil, but certainly not the guide. I currently have the fourth Lady of Death with 3 ravens. I turned it in last year. And, and it finishes up, what happens in the third one. And I actually pull the god of death into the stories because Cat kind of pisses him off. So yeah.
Give me something to look forward
Something
to.
about being a necromancer, death not liking it, that kind of thing. And that's the other thing. If you have a necromancer character, they're technically screwing with death. And if you have a death as a character, death isn't going to like someone screwing with the dead. So you've got that aspect. And so, in the fourth book, she pays a price. She survives, but there's a price. But you were so looking forward to it, I know. Teri.
Of course, my lady.
So,
but you got to make the character fit the universe. If you're writing, urban fantasy like the Calliope Reaper Jones, you have to figure out how to fit death into a modern universe. And there's other novels where, death is a person, is personified. And I know there was a very popular series. I can't think of the name. I have no brain, but it was a high school girl who ended up taking over as death. And, you have those options for writing, and it adds a twist to everything.
Okay, well, we're gonna
in urban fantasy and paranormal, you often see death as a romantic interest, and so they put skin on him because otherwise that's a little bizarre. Go ahead, JR. I think you were taking us somewhere.
Yeah, we're gonna pause for a moment and play a commercial that is totally not bizarre because that's a heck of a segue. But here we go.
Don O'Hara was lucky. At least, that's what everyone else said. Born the son of a general, with a guaranteed ticket to commander's school, Don had his future laid out for him. Only he didn't want that future. All he ever wanted was to be a space jumper. Lucky for him, he never lacked guts. Pursuing Dreams is an action-packed science fiction young adult adventure that takes the reader on a wild ride as Don fights for his dream and, as a result, stumbles upon the truth about his family and the O'Hara legacy. With his life turned on end and unable to shake the feeling that he's being watched, Don does the only thing he can. He keeps moving forward, not knowing that every step takes him closer to becoming the most hated man alive.
All right, thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. So we were talking about death, and we've kind of we've talked about various places where we see that in literature on the screen. But what is the demeanor normally like of the death character, and why do you think we portray it a certain way? Is there a standard, or is it all over the place? Because I don't read the same romances apparently that Jana is reading, where death is a love interest, because that just feels creepy to me. But I mean, I'm not going to judge.
Well, I think it follows naturally that Death's response is going to be based on who he is dealing with. He's not going to be a jerk to everybody. He's not going to be nice to everybody. And so his response really has to be tailored like that.
I think that it's more common nowadays for Death to have many different faces, like John is saying. I think that that's more common now than it used to be back in, Seventh Seal days, where Death was this dour, grim Reaper. I mean, that's why they call him the Grim Reaper, because his skeleton, he's scary. And I think that in the last, I don't want to put in a year on it. I don't have any idea. I'm just guessing. But recently, with the idea that Death could be a character that you could relate to, then we start getting all these different ideas about, well, Death is friendly, Death is kind, Death is scary, Death is, whatever is going to suit the story, death can be representative of that.
There's also an interesting representation of multiple Reapers in the Black Butler anime series. And I think the manga as well, prior to that. They're very bookish. Like they're not guides, but they're not collecting souls either. The size that they use, which can be various tools, including a lawnmower, go figure, they're to see the record of that person's life. And they just have collections of tons and tons of books of all these people's lives. And so they are some of them are very bored. Some of them are very into what they're doing. It just depends on that particular Reaper's personality. So even in that one franchise, there's multiple depictions of what these Reapers can be.
It's interesting you're seeing that across all literatures, even back into the 90s. So, like, the idea is witches, for instance, they ride brooms. For whatever reason, that's part of the lore. So when we had the Hocus Pocus, what does she ride? Something that serves the purpose of the broom. Ergo, she's riding a vacuum, right? And then it follows, what does the scythe do? It's used to clear harvest and grass if it gets tall enough. So what replaces that in modern worlds? A lawnmower. So I actually kind of think that's neat that they would start using modern representations of the same tool. And that means that death should be a middle-aged man yelling at kids to get off his lawn, because the lawnmower.
We need a death like that now.
Yeah, the lawnmowers, and he's probably wearing New Balance because that's what you wear.
Oh yeah.
Well, I actually think he needs to have a lot of similarity with Santa Claus, because if there's only one Reaper, he's got to visit every house over time. And so Santa Claus, he does that once a year. The Reaper has to go through a good portion of the world every day. And so,
nobody gives him cookies to power him through.
Yeah, you don't leave cookies out for the Reaper.
Well, that's an interesting thing, because there was a rise like Dead Like Me or Bleach or any of or Black Butler, the numerous Reapers, where it's not just one Reaper. Because go back to the Seventh Seal, death wasn't so much a character as just an idea, a representation of death, an event. But as you personify it more, you have all the different faces of death. You have these academies for Reapers. You have these, and for lack of a better term, training programs or on-the-job training, or like RIPD with the souls that get away, and you have to actually have a criminal police force, or just the evolution of the concept surrounding death. We've talked about so far how so many different cultures represent in so many different ways, and it's gone far beyond just like the agrarian scythe wielding harvester, to include so many different types: the comforting happy deaths, the guides, the enforcers dragging you to hell, whatever aspect is presented, they come in just like all kinds of different shapes, forms. Love interest is the new one, apparently. If you're trying to get out of it, just seduce death, right?
Sure.
It works.
Except you're compared against how many billions of people?
And so much of this is driven by writers' need to do something fresh and new with the concept of death, because it's now open to us to get away from the original Grim Reaper, who's just the serious guy. Now that that's possible, people are looking for ways to stand out and say, well, this is a different way that we can look at death, and isn't this interesting? And I think that's a real benefit, because it means we get all these great stories, and there's really something that appeals to everyone in using death as a character in a story.
Well, it seems like it's become less of a taboo subject also, because for a long time, if you think about it, death was a solemn occasion, and you didn't want to anger death by possibly mocking it or insulting or anything like that. So the fact that, people are now writing about it and it's less taboo, it's turned into entertainment and more enjoyable. More people are willing to do.
Yeah, though that's very cultural too, because some cultures, death has always been a celebration. And there's a lot of things around the celebration of death, the moving on, the sacrifices that you would bring, the ritual, all that kind of stuff. There's parties and dancing and wakes. I mean, I've told my husband before, I do not want sad, solemn funeral kind of thing when I go. I want a wake in which people eat my favorite foods and tell lies about me.
I could tell
want
you
it to be a happy thing. I don't want it to be a sad thing. So a lot of that is culture, though, that the Reaper and the becoming death is all part of that celebration. Yes, they take that spirit away at the end, but the Reaper is part of that whole. It's just the thing that happens in time. It's inevitable. Everyone's going to die. It doesn't have to be bad, and that's always been cultural.
I remember a Murder, She Wrote episode where the ballet. The whole thing centers around a ballet performance, and in the ballet, it's about one of the characters dancing, performing, is portraying death, and he holds the skull out to the ballerina, and she's supposed to, go like this away from it, and apparently that's an actual thing, dance performance. I can't think the right term for it in ballet, but it's frequently portrayed, and it's always been portrayed. It's just a matter of how do the different cultures portray it, and for, like I said, depending on the culture, you don't want to anger one group of people by doing one thing or another. But I do know that performance is a thing, and it's actually a really interesting story behind it. I vaguely remember it, but I do remember enjoying the story behind the ballet.
So one of the things that would play into it, speaking of what you were talking about with the culture, Jana, is that in many places we still have, even in nominally Christian nations, there's the ancestor worship is built into many of the cultures, or if not worship, reverence of. And so if that's the case, it's not so much that you're afraid of death as you don't want to insult your family that came before you. And whenever you think about that scene, you can always go back to Mulan, a curse upon you, the little dragon.
On you, on your
cow, on your
right. So it's
dishonor.
It's about like honoring those that came before you, and the fact that I think everyone understands at some degree, whether you say it this way or not, is that you're standing on the shoulders of everyone that came before you. And so part of that treatment of death is honoring that. And that is why you don't see as much until I guess somewhat recently, where they would, turn death somehow into a sex magnet for romance novels or whatever the case may be.
Now, come on. Death in the Sandman comics is absolutely delightful. She's phenomenally cute, and that predates a lot of the latest urban fantasy where death becomes a romantic thing. Now, she's not always romantic, but that idea that death can be a person versus a skeleton, you saw that in Supernatural. There were many Reapers in Supernatural, and they were kind of the servants of death itself. So they weren't each death, but they were Reapers. And, because Sam tries to negotiate strenuously with a gun when at one point when his father's dying, at another point when Dean is dying, which does not give you really exact information because that happened a lot. Spoiler alert. But so they bring in the Reapers there too, and again, they're not skeletal. They are, honest to goodness, they look like people. They go through, and there's emotive states, and there's a lot of discussion going on. So it's not brand new to say that death can be much more personified in that way.
Oh, so, yeah, and that reminds me of an earlier Twilight Zone episode with Robert Redford playing Death. And this woman who is holed up in her house, and she's scared of dying, and so she's not going to let anybody in because it could be death. And then she lets in this young man, and it turns out he's death. And so I was thinking, as Jana was talking about, okay, how far back does this go? And I'm sure it goes farther back than that, but that's the farthest I can remember of death being represented as just like us. And I think maybe there's something to that idea of seeing death as just another person in terms of what death looks like, the appearance of death, that we're making that something safe and comfortable because, this isn't an alien force. This isn't something terrible. This is part of what the human experience is. And so having death be a person, I think, applies to that sort of comforting feeling. And what James was saying about being a guide, you're maybe going to be more open to a guide that looks like you than to a 7-foot tall skeleton. Maybe. I don't know.
I like the idea of that.
Yeah, less uncanny valley there.
It ties into what I did in a particular story where death plays a character. The person who is dying effectively says, "Oh, it's you," because he recognizes him for having turned up multiple times in his life and actually being a friend.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, in college, I wrote a short story for a creative writing class that death was a character in it. And it was based on this place my husband and I had gone to, geocaching, and had a bad experience the second 2 times we went. We just decided that place was cursed and we never had to go back again. And the premise of that story was death was fed up with all the stupid deaths that were happening, like rock climbers free climbing like Half Dome in Yosemite and falling to their deaths, and all these other things that happen. And towards the end of it, somebody else had died. Not stupidly, it was completely by accident, but their souls were stuck and they couldn't go anywhere. And so death was starting to make these deals with, hey, yes, you're dead, but maybe you could help me. And we can start parceling out dealing with all these stupid people who are dying in dumb ways,
So
and work together to make it better.
Speaking of dying in dumb ways, because this is a weird track my brain just went to. So you think all those moments where it's like, here, hold my beer when they do something stupid, do you think the Reaper either lets them finish the beer or drinks it for them?
Well, in the Discworld novels, there are plenty of places where someone is about to die, and in the books, the speech of death is represented visually by a different by small caps in bold. Okay, so you know that death is speaking without having to be told that it's death, because there's a visual cue. And so you'll be going along reading and somebody will be about to do something, and then death will be the one who responds, and he's like, yes, I'll hold your beer. And they never say anything about who it is. It's just, that's death. And so sometimes, yes, death is right there waiting for you to make that final stupid move.
I haven't read any of the books. I love that. That's amazing.
That's great.
That's
you
what
need
I was
to read
kind of
them.
thinking the same idea. Just be careful who you hand your beer to. Death is usually the one.
Yeah.
If death's the one that takes your beer, don't go through with it.
No.
That's
You
right
just
up
your death holding up those cards like they do at the Olympics. 8.5, 9, 0, 0.
0.
Yeah,
Zero,
that's
you're coming with me.
I've seen some of the well, I don't say it's trend because I don't read enough of it to say that, but I've seen several where it's not one Grim Reaper, it's a bunch of them. It's more like a title, and so it's like almost like a afterlife unit, as it were. And those can be interesting to read, where they have that sort of chain of command. It's like, oh, you make me take Mr. Johnson again? He's not going to go through with it, or what, whatever. I imagine you could get a lot of gallows humor out of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I like that.
Could you imagine a Grim Reaper convention where they're all sitting around at a bar and discussing about the dumbest things they've had to deal with?
So there I was.
Even cooler would be if there was a Grim Reaper convention where it's all normies. They're just fans of whatever, insert media.
Yeah.
And the real Grim Reaper sits there and he starts talking to them because he misunderstood. It's like the joke about the pet owner that shows up at a furry convention and it was not what they were expecting.
Yeah.
Like, and they start talking to the neighbors sitting next to him, and he's like, "Wait, you're crazy, man." It's like, "Wait, we're all Reapers here." I can see all kinds of shenanigans.
Oh, yes.
Oh, always.
Now I got to write that short story. Curse myself.
Yeah,
Um,
you do.
So do you guys, is it something, I mean, obviously Jenny's already answered this one, but is it something the other in Pittman, but is the rest of you, have you actually written Grim Reaper type characters?
Yes, sort of. My first novel is about a priestess of the god of death, and the god of death's priests and priestesses are basically reapers for the souls of the ghosts who get lost. So it's not everybody that they are taking the lives of, but they have the authority to issue the god's blessing, which is a quick and painless death, and they are able to put together the ghosts, which are souls that lost their way, and give them a final shove in the right direction. So they are essentially a team of reapers.
Okay. What about you, John?
Yeah, I've got a short story. That's all I have done personally with it, but I really did have a lot of fun with it. So Death is effectively a time traveler, which brings in my gearhead science fiction writer ideas. But that's how he is parallelized into being able to deal with every person in the world. He just time travels to the beginning of the life of the next person to die and does that over and over. And so he can meet himself, but he's been told, you can't meet yourself because that's against the rules, because you do dumb stuff when that happens.
Teri, what about you?
I haven't yet. That one for college is the only thing I've written that really involves death or Reaper type character. But it's an interesting concept to play with. I have another story concept where someone goes to the realm of the dead, but that's not quite the same thing.
No, not at all. Although, like Dante's Inferno type stories, those exist. You've got to pull you see a lot of it in some of the Greek mythology where they trick the ferryman into taking them over so they can save their friend's soul.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Jana? Have you written any?
Yeah, the fantasy trilogy that I have, they are all knights of the god of death. They don't kill people, but they're there to deal with supernatural threats. So it's like you say, there's necromancers, there's a lich that's causing problems, and their job is to deal with the things that are brought back that are against the natural process of what is supposed to happen when things die. So that's all there. And then my Diana McDonough books which are hopefully going to come out soon. She's an urban fantasy character in New Orleans, and so deals a lot with the voodoo culture, and she has a run-in with the Baron in a short story that might be coming out. It's been turned into an anthology, so we'll see if that's coming out or not.
So the Death Knight, that's the one that we've done the interview on? That's the one you're talking about for the fantasy?
Yes, sir.
So I guess the closest thing I've ever gotten to writing about a Reaper is I wrote a Mill Sci-Fi where there's like an ODST but not ODST type orbital drop unit, and they were called the Grim Reaper because dropping was so dangerous. It was like they rode with death, but I don't think that really counts.
That's still pretty cool.
I've always loved the ODST, and I know everyone likes the Spartans, but for me, like the normal humans that have to do it anyway, that's always been sort of my everyman soft spot. So we've talked about like the ways we've seen death portrayed. Do you feel like, and this is, everyone can jump in, some settings, and if so, which ones lend themselves better to a Reaper type story?
You can work them into anything.
Yeah.
In my opinion. I like doing it in my urban fantasy. In fact, since we were talking about it earlier, one of my chapters is literally called Death Rides a Pale Lawnmower.
Nice.
So I like the urban fantasy because we were talking about earlier, it opens that door for a more modern spin on it. Like I draw in the most recent Felix, I draw on the I can never say it right, so bear with me. The Kaliak Gaelic winter hag death spirit type. She again is more of a guide. She shows people the way to the Orphic Gates, which is basically the land of the dead, portal to the dead. And I make her basically a pissed off ex. So in a big like flowy white robe, because she's like a Native American owl spirit too. You know, there's all kinds of there's latitude to play. You can pull from modern myths and ancient myths and the different personifications, or even like the tangential, like, Jenny was talking about earlier, banshees or other like heralds of death or other spirits of death, like with Felix. Well, the death spirits, he avoids them because he's immortal, and they give him crap about always giving them a slip. That's kind of like an ongoing joke in the series. But it's just such rich fodder. There's no one setting that really lends itself. It just really depends on what you're trying to portray with it, in my opinion.
So with an immortal character, do you ever throw in jokes about there could be only one just because?
Of course. Felix is rife with pop culture references and Easter eggs and jokes about every other line. Depends on how many you can actually catch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I don't know. I guess I think places with dark history, so like New Orleans, kind of, when you think Grim Reaper type things, that setting kind of speaks to you, or places of great tragedy or horror, so battlefields or massacre locations, or to me that seems like almost natural, but that leads into death being, or Grim Reaper being darkness and not necessarily just a guide.
Well, maybe for places like that, that's where you need someone gentle and understanding.
Yeah.
Because you've got all these, like, say, a battlefield. Okay, this is a place where great horrors have happened, and the people who died probably weren't really expecting to. I mean, they go to war, sure, but I don't know how many people actually believe in their own mortality. And so I think maybe what I was thinking is something along what you were saying, that the representation of death reflects the place that you're writing about. But now I'm thinking maybe that's backwards. Maybe what we need is to change things up so that you're getting something unexpected. I mean, Jana mentioned death's, the Sandman's death, who is represented as a perky young woman, a goth chick, and yet she's kind and understanding and loving, and is just the right person for a soul that maybe has lost its way. So maybe the juxtaposition of the dark place and the bright death is appealing. Maybe that's something that is, I don't know if it hasn't been done. I'm guessing it probably has at some point, but maybe that's a new way to look at it, is don't go with what you expect to see, go with something unusual.
Yeah, those twists can be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she's not always happy, perky, positive. In general, yeah, but she can handle business if need be. Again, that whole,
that's right.
Are they coming willingly, or are they being a pain?
Mm-hmm.
She basically takes the form of whatever needs to be dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
And then
for JR, think about the weird spots. So you talk about battlefields and whatever. Elvis's bathroom or other places you never expected. A frat party, Elvis's bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I'm going to, anybody that's been to college that actually had fraternities would not be shocked to see death in a frat party bathroom.
Yeah.
We're just going to assume alcohol was involved.
Death's doing Kickstarter.
But yeah, I could see that. That could be interesting. I don't know. In my head,
everyone under the table,
right?
Yeah.
Like, and another part of that is I wonder if you have like more than one. If there's not just the Santa Claus method that John talked about, if there's a group of Reapers doing the same thing because there's so many bodies, you can imagine. Are there some types of souls they don't want to get? Another lawyer. I hate the lawyers or something.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe, go over here. This guy is just ticking me off. You go collect him. I'll go over there.
And have all the different personalities of Reapers too. I mean, we kind of talked about that earlier. I like the idea of a group of Reapers, and they're all a little bit different because of their experiences. Maybe you get the guy who got 100 suicides in a row, and he's feeling like he wishes he could get drunk. Something like that.
Or you get 6 of them showing up at the same event and thinking, "Wait a minute,
who messed
This
up
one's
the
gonna be
paperwork
bad
and sent us all here?"
Unless it wasn't a mess up and more are going to die.
Yeah, that's
Think
right.
about those who would have to collect the souls of, children, babies, or those who have died in, first responders who've died trying to save people, whether it's, professional or just a normal average Joe, those reapers are going to have a completely different outlook. Are they going to be the cold ones who can compartmentalize? Are they going to be the matronly type, the motherly, parental typed, or what are their personalities going to be? You've got all of that too. I definitely need a drink after that, car pileup or the train wreck that derailed 4 train cars. Also think about the battlefield. You're seeing horrific things, people who've gone through horrific deaths, and they're okay, so you 3 get to go there. Y'all just wait over there. I'll get to you in a minute. How would they do that?
So speaking
And maybe
of,
you have
go
Reaper
ahead, Jen.
specialists who specialize in those different categories.
So in the Army, we have this expression, the shit detail, because at one point in time, like when you're getting to a location, you literally burn it in a 55-gallon drum to make it go away. And I imagine like those are the kind of jobs you give the people who get in trouble. Like, oh man, Private Smith, you done messed up again. You get to reap that one over there now. And if I was going to write it as a horror, this is for you, James, but if I was going to write it as a horror, the Reapers would want the booze after doing their job, but they couldn't taste any of it, and they couldn't get drunk.
Oh, that's just mean.
That'd be awful.
That's why I said it was a horror story.
Yep, totally.
There is a little content creator called Flicker Spark, and she does the cutest little reels about death. And it's Death and Martha. And Martha's job is she's the administrative assistant type, and she's also the one that runs the computer that runs the universe. And so she always calls her and Death, yes, my mortal companion. And then she's handing her files, and it's like, you need to go do a pickup. And Death is just perky and adorable and continually not doing the things she's supposed to do. And Martha spends her entire time trying to get Death going where she's supposed to, when she's supposed to do it. And they're talking about, the many multiverses that Death pops in and out of, the people that she meets, because she's very upfront about, well, I just happen to be female presenting, but I mean, I'm Death, so whatever it is that you expect, we got this going. And it's just a cute way to look at it, because here's this person trying to keep Death on task, and Death is all over the place, and also really digs into the whole, I don't choose where you go. My job is I've got the file here, and the file says this is what you deserve. So, some people just don't deserve kneecaps. And it's like, well, wait, but I was good. Nope, sorry. The file controls everything. My job is just to take you from here to where the file says you're going. Sorry. So just on a lighter note, totally worth going and finding her stuff, because she is just adorable.
Cute.
It's a great series.
Say that again.
I've watched a lot of them.
Imagine
it's by Flicker Spark.
I went to
Flicker
Spark
Spark.
Manager.
Yeah, okay. Because I was going to say Sparkle Princess, and I knew that was wrong, but it was all I could remember.
So next
Flicker
question,
Spark. Got it.
the question is when you have a Karen Reaper and a Karen dying, I want to see that head, like who's talking about manager first.
Oh yeah.
That's a funny way you're going to end it, because we are at the hour 15, and I've tried to get it on the hour. So obviously there's more topics that we could discuss, more niches we can drill down on. And I know we're going to come back to this because this was Nick's topic and he got the flu. So unfortunately he was not here tonight. So with that, if you've got any narrowed targets or topics that you want us to discuss, dear listener, shoot it to us in the comments, and we'll do follow-up visits and, get the band back together again, as they say. But with that, was there anything we didn't cover that you guys want to before we wrap this up?
I just think Death needs its own dive bar, like first responders and cops do.
Yeah.
In Terry Pratchett, it's called Beers, Biers, and it's where all the otherworldly creatures go when they need to unwind and just be themselves. So Death, his granddaughter tends to go there more often than Death does because Death can't get drunk, but they have their otherworldly bar. And I agree. So I agree with you. I think Death needs a place to go because he's seen some stuff.
Yeah, all those precincts have their own cop bars. Wander into a Reaper bar.
Right. Totally.
All right. Well, with that, this is the part of the podcast, dear listeners, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right book. So do your part, people. And one of the things we've been trying to do a little bit better, and we can't always make it happen because there are character limits on show notes. But if we talk about specific books, we're trying to do better at writing them down and linking them so you can find them. We can't always do that. Today's enough panelists that that's not going to happen. But in the future, start looking for those, and you'll start seeing more of those wherever possible. And with that, I'm going to ask our guests to tell us where they can find them. So we're going to start with you, James. Where can we find you on the Wild Wild interwebs?
So you can find me on the Wild Wild Webs at halfacrepond.com. That's the main hub for everything. On the socials, JE Pittman Writes on the Facebook, j.e.pittman on just about everywhere else. And if you're so inclined, I have a brand new conspiracy board that I'm placing on various socials. It's full of Easter eggs for the Felix Chance series in celebration of the release of Off Chance, just out last week.
Woohoo!
Nice. All right, next we got Miss Jana S Brown and the many personalities thereof. So where can we find you on the internets?
You can find me hanging out over at opalkingdompress.com or on Amazon and the socials and all those kinds of things under Jena Rey or Jana S Brown Writes or other things that we're not going to talk about tonight. Don't say it, JR. Don't. Go on. Move on.
I'm just saying you can write the Smoochies with Death and a Grim Reaper. I don't know that I would read it, but you could do it.
I could, and I might.
I know Stabby has read a book where the love interest were the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. So after that, the bar's pretty low.
Sure.
All right, Jenny, where can we find you on the Wild Wild interwebs?
You can find me at threeravenspublishing.com. You can find me on Amazon under j.f. Posthumous. Make sure you spell the name right. You can find me on Facebook under author JF Posthumous or Jennie Posthumous. And Amazon. I think I mentioned Amazon. Yeah. So I think that's where all the places you can find me.
All right. What about you, John?
You can find me on my blog, johnmolson.blogspot.com. Yeah, the M really does keep popping up over and over. Or you can find me on Amazon fairly easily with the middle initial, or if you add something in like my last name and Polecat Protocol, my science fiction series, that's also a fairly easy way to find me on Amazon. And I have a whole bunch of short stories and 8 novels there that you can peruse through.
At the time this episode will air, your Polecat Protocol interview will actually have been aired the week before. So they will already know to go look for it.
Awesome.
Right. Melissa, where can we find you and your War Hamsters and War Masters?
That War Hamster thing has to be a story someday. I'm sorry. You can find me at melissamcshanewrites.com. That is my website and the link to my storefront. I'm also on Amazon. You can search on Melissa McShane and find all my many books. I am on X as M McShane Writes. And you can also find my reviews on Goodreads. I am not the typical reviewer. I am reviewing my current reading project. And so if you're interested in what I'm reading right now, that's where you would want to look.
All right. Last but certainly not least, we have Miss Teri K. Jobe.
You can find me on also the Amazon page, Teri K. Jobe. Sometimes you can find me on Facebook as well. Again, Teri K. Jobe. And if you can't find me there, start lifting up random rocks. I might be under one of them.
Now, do you have a separate social media presence platform for your Teri as narrator versus Teri as author, or do you got it all linked?
At the moment, it's just the one.
That seems the easiest, so I'm totally there. Lazy is best. I mean, it's called time efficient. Yeah. There we go. Time efficient. It sounds better. All right, and you can find us, dear listener, on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree / Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree / Blasters and Blades Podcast. Deep breath, where we link to all the things, the BitChutes, the Rumbles, the YouTubes, the TikToks, the Twitters, the Spotify, our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email, Blasters and Blades Podcast @gmail.com. Again, Blasters and Blades Podcast @gmail.com. For professional purposes only, people, save shenanigans for Madam Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, Twitter, and the email. And maybe the TikTok. We don't know. It's up in the air. Future me will answer that sometime. But that's not today time. You can support the show over there at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that is for the co-host, and I promise for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink the coffee so strong even death is afraid to try it. Oh yeah, that's a challenge. And if you want to support the show more directly, you could also go to Coffee Brand Coffee. Link is in the show notes. Podcast Grunts is the discount code. You get 10% off. You support an American-made company. You get a little bit of a kickback goes to us, so you're supporting us. It's a win-win. And I am a big proponent of shopping local, so that's as awesome as we can get. That is a soapbox I have been on too many times, so they took it away from me. So instead, I'm going to say, thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time. We'll indulge your love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. Thank you for coming on, everybody. And with that, I'm going to hit the end button. Wait for it.